Because the now legendary album Boston came out in 1976. The initial hope I read was of maybe shifting maybe a couple of 100,000 copies, just enough to make sure that you had the deal in place to do a second record. But those sales were surpassed within weeks. They were flying off the shelves. I mean, take me back to that time when things just went boom for you.
Well, you're right. We were hoping to sell 100,000 records because that was kind of the threshold that you'd have to sell in order for the record company to finance another record. So we were just hoping we'd make it to 100,000 records. And, some More Than a Feeling had been released to radio before the record came out and was taking off like crazy. So when the record came out, it really took off in a really big way. And, I think we sold out that 100,000 records in the first week it was out. We sold 1 million records in the first month it was out. But at that point, we hadn't really performed as a band. Brad and I had done a few shows around town earlier when we were still doing demos, but, we weren't really a live act at that point. So the record label had booked a tour of nightclubs in the Midwest of the United States. And we didn't have any infrastructure, so to speak. We didn't have any roadies. We didn't have any equipment. There was an advertisement called the Warren Advertiser that had a section of musical instruments. And we went in there and we went out and bought amplifiers and guitars and drums, used from the Bargain Hunter's Guide in order to get the equipment together. And then we started rehearsing. And again, we didn't have any road crew members. So we'd have people hanging around in the hallways of the rehearsal space. We said, hey, you want to be a roadie? Yeah, okay, you're a roadie, So, not only were we really green, but everybody around us was really green as well. So we ended up going to the Midwest and, they had booked us in nightclubs. And there were lines all the way around the block at these places. There were way more people than could fit in the rooms, showing up. And that's when it really started kicking in that, there's something really going on here. And then almost immediately, we got our first tour, which was opening up for Black Sabbath.
Wow.
It seemed like an odd pairing, but at that point, Black Sabbath, their career was going on the downside. Our career was going up, and they really appreciated us, being on the bill and selling tickets, and they treated us super, super great. I mean, the guys were just fantastic. In fact, we stayed in touch with them for years and years after that, right up until fairly recently, really.
Oh, brilliant. So what do you remember those days with Sabbath? I mean, obviously you said that the career was coming down slightly from the heady days of like the late 60s, early 70s, but were they still as crazy as all the stories that fly around about them?
Honestly, not really. You hear all the stories about drug use, but I didn't see any of that at all, really. I do have one funny story. We had a day off, and at that point, if you wanted to watch a movie in a room, you phone down to the desk and they put it on your TV. And Brad had a favorite horror movie, so we figured we'd watch that in the room. And we invited the guys from Black Sabbath to watch the movie. So we're all sitting in front of the TV, and they're all this talk about Black Sabbath and Satan and all this kind of stuff. And we're watching the movie, and Ozzy is, sitting on the floor with a trash can in front of him in case he throws up. They have the big, crosses around their neck, and they're clutching their crosses. I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's Satan worshipers. Yeah, right.
Oh,
But
nice.
we had some really good times. We were staying in like Holiday Inns and that sort of thing, and being down in the bar at the Holiday Inn with Black Sabbath was quite a experience.
Indeed, indeed. And you said you went from nightclubs to supporting Black Sabbath to pretty much headlining arenas all in the space of just a few months, didn't it? I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, the album came out in August. We went out on the tour with them probably October through the end of '76. And then the beginning of '77, we were already headlining arenas on our own. And we went all through '77. And by the summer of '77, we were even doing some stadium work. So
Wow.
it just took off in a really huge way. For those first 6 months or so, it seemed like we were just pedaling as fast as we could to try to
Yes.
keep up with it all.
I can imagine.
People would say, "Well, what was it like? You sold all those records." Honestly, we didn't really have much of a chance to think about it when it came down to it.
It was just insane. It was the fastest selling debut album at that point, wasn't it, of all time? And then I think it shifted something like 17 million records to this point. It really is
17 million
wild.
records, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely wild.
That
Absolutely
was when
wild.
people still bought records.
Yes, the good old days, the good old days indeed. Now, we've got to mention you touched on it yourself there. You said it come out before the record. More Than a Feeling. I mean, it is one of the greatest songs. It's a rock staple, isn't it? It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as itself. I mean, what do you remember of the first time you heard that song, or what was the recording sessions for it like? I mean, take us back to those days.
Well, it actually was an amalgam of a couple of different songs. The chorus Tom had before, and then he had the verse before, but in other songs. So it actually went through several different forms before it ended up in the form that people are familiar with. Uh, Actually, if you search around enough online, you can find some of those very early versions of it. It's pretty interesting to listen to. So not only that song, but a lot of them went through a lot of different versions of it before they ended up the versions that you hear on the record. And of course, the record companies loved the demo tape, but then when it came time to record the record, they didn't want Tom to be the producer, which made absolutely no sense at all. So what we did is we had John Boylan come in as producer, and he and Tom co-produced the record. But Tom went back to the basement and just recorded all the songs over again the same way he had done them in the first place. And John Boylan was out on the West Coast, and we went out, the band without Tom, to the West Coast and recorded some songs out there, kind of in a ruse to the record label that the band was actually doing the
Yep.
recording in California when Tom was still doing it in his basement. So, and they didn't really figure it all out, so it all worked out pretty well.